we're not enough yet. And I get it. I really do. Because the world we live in constantly tell us to do more and be better. Even our wellness has been turned into a performance, into a kind of spiritual productivity. I never planned to be in psychoeducation. I kind of fell into it. Mindfulness, coaching. But behind a calm voice, I was walking on eggshells. There was a rule book. Yeah, no thanks. I ask questions. I live in the gray zones. This is space in between. No fluff, no filters. Welcome. You're in the right place. Welcome back to Space in Between, the podcast for the stuff you feel, but don't always say out loud. I'm Vesna, and I'm not here to fix you or help you finally become your most self-optimized, trauma-healed, glow from within version of yourself. Last time, we talked about vulnerability, real versus performative, about how sharing your truth online isn't always connection. Sometimes it's control. And today, we're naming something big: the pressure to constantly grow, to heal, to become the best version of yourself, which, let's be honest, is starting to feel less like a personal journey and more like a never ending wellness project with a very passive aggressive project manager. Let's start with a simple question. What if you don't need to be your best self? What if all this upgrading, improving, and optimizing isn't actually healing, but just another way we avoid accepting ourselves as we are? Let me paint a picture. You wake up and feel a bit off. Before you even had your coffee, you're wondering, did I journal enough this week? Should I try that new somatic workshop? Am I stuck in a limiting belief again? Somewhere along the way, taking care of yourself turned into a full-time job. And your value? It started getting measured by how self-aware you are, how regulated you sound, how many books, breathwork sessions, and breakthroughs you can stack on your personal broad resume. And if you're not doing the work, you're slacking, you're regressing, you are spiritually lazy. You don't just exist anymore. You are a project, a constant renovation site with no end date. But here's the thing nobody really says out loud. That's not growth. That's just a socially acceptable form of self-rejection. And let me be clear, this isn't a critique of people who are genuinely trying to understand themselves, who are doing therapy, who are healing old wounds, who are learning how to show up in healthier ways. That work matters. This is about something else. This is about what happens when working on yourself becomes working on your image, when self-awareness becomes a competition, when even your healing journey starts to feel like a lifestyle brand. You know the vibe. You wake up with a mindfulness practice. You eat the healthy breakfast. You listen to a podcast about boundaries or burnout while on your walk. You journal. You attend the trauma-informed course, the women's circle, the coaching session. You read the book, process the trigger, show up to your life consciously. You breathe, you stretch, you reframe. And none of that is bad. It can be deeply nourishing when it's grounded in care. But somewhere along the way, we stopped asking, why am I doing this? Because what I've noticed in myself and in so many of the people I know who are deep in the self-development world, is this creeping sense that it's never enough, that we are never enough, that there's always another layer to peel back, another version of yourself to reach, another wound to heal, one more book, one more coach, one more habit to fix, one more emotional block to clear. Or at least that's the promise. And maybe the real work lives in the space in between who we are endlessly striving to become and who we are secretly scared we already are. Because here is what I've come to see. When self-improvement becomes a way to delay self-acceptance, when healing becomes another word for fixing, when growth turns into a constant internal performance review, then we've lost the plot. Because at some point, it stops being about learning and starts becoming a quiet form of self-punishment. The version of ourselves we're trying to reach, the best version, starts to feel like a moving target, a fantasy, a perfected, always evolving version of us that's somehow calmer, wiser, more radiant, more aligned. And the version we are now, always almost there, always nearly enough, but not quite. And that's not growth. That's perfectionism in disguise. A socially acceptable way to keep believing we're not enough yet. And I get it. I really do. Because the world we live in constantly tell us to do more and be better. Even our wellness has been turned into a performance, into a kind of spiritual productivity. But what if the biggest growth isn't another course or another epiphany? What if it's the moment you pause and say, I'm enough, not perfect, not finished, but enough? What if that pause is where real self respect begins? I know women, brilliant, self aware women, who told me they only started to enjoy their lives again when they stopped working on themselves, when they stopped striving for the version of themselves that would finally make them lovable, worthy, successful, peaceful. So today, I'm not asking you to quit your practice. I'm not saying stop growing, but I'm asking you to notice. Are you doing this because you love yourself or because you don't? Are you growing or just trying to become acceptable? That's what we're sitting with today. Because healing isn't about turning yourself into a project. It's about remembering you are already a person. Because here is the truth no one claps for. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do isn't another breakthrough. It's saying, I'm enough, even if I don't grow this week. Sometimes the most rebellious act is not trying to improve. It's stopping. It's saying, I'm tired of treating myself like a problem. I don't need to earn rest. I'm allowed to exist, even when I'm not healing. Because real growth doesn't always come with clarity or a takeaway or a shiny transformation. Sometimes it just looks like being with yourself without trying to change what you find. So, here is what I want to ask you this week. What would happen if you didn't work on yourself for a while? What would happen if you just lived confused, beautifully human, no 5-step plan, no morning routine, no personal breakthrough? What would happen if you gave yourself back to yourself as you are? Because that's the space in between becoming and belonging to yourself again. And speaking of that, next time we're diving into the shiny, corporate friendly cousin of self awareness, mindfulness. You've seen it, you've scrolled past it. What happens when inner peace becomes a product? Let's talk about how mindfulness got monetized. See you next time in the space between I'm doing the work and I'm exhausted from trying to be better. Stay uncomfortable.